Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Nicole and I'm a medical student studying in Hong Kong. In today's video, I'll be sharing how I created my study schedule for preparing for my medical school exams. The entire process of making a study schedule and sticking to it can be broken down into 3 parts: preparation, execution, and adjustment. The first part of preparation is creating the physical study plan, and I used Excel for this because I found it easy to use, the interface was nice, it was a lot easier to learn how to use in comparison to other apps such as Notion, so I chose to use Excel, but use whatever works for you. As for when you should start making the study schedule, it just really depends on the amount of material that you have to study and the number of exams that you have. For me, I created my study schedule around a month in advance to the first exam date. So my first exam was the first week of May, so I created the study schedule the first week of April. Overall, the framework of my study schedule can be broken down into 5 sections: calendar, topics, incomplete, resources, and overview. Section 1 is calendar. So how I made it is that I had the first row as the days of the week, and then under that I had the actual dates of every day in that month leading up to my exams. Based on the number of exams or classes you have, leave that number of empty rows between each row of dates. For example, I had 3 exams, so I left 3 empty rows between each row of dates. Assign each class to a blank row. You can note it down on the side, but I just did this mentally. I really liked using Excel to create my study schedule because I could do some formatting and make some of the rows stand out with different colors, and it just made everything look slightly more aesthetically pleasing, so that when I was looking back at my study schedule, even though I was stressed, it still looked kind of pretty. These are the things that I would color code. Number 1 is the days and the dates. Specifically for the dates that I might be busy, for example, I might have a doctor's appointment on that day, I would color code that in a separate bright color in order to make it stand out to me and to remind me that I should allocate less topics because I might have less time. Also color code the exam dates in a very bold color to remind you of the ultimate deadline and the day you will be finally liberated from studying. Section 2 is topics. Under each exam that I had coming up, I listed the big topics that I would need to study. For example, for my HUS class, I had topics on the thorax, abdomen, pelvis. UL and LL stands for upper limb and lower limb respectively, and finally I also had to study a bit of embryology. Under these 6 topics, I also wrote the number 6 in order to remind me of the total number of topics I had. So I did this for all 3 classes, for HUS, HUF, and MMG. Now it's time for you to distribute and assign each topic to different days on your calendar. Decide how much buffer you want first. So I gave myself around 2 weeks of buffer time to catch up on whatever work I had planned to do but failed to complete, and refer to the next section about this. So the rest is just math. Decide the number of days that you can devote per topic based on the time you have till exams minus the buffer time that you want to have. And be flexible. So you can study more topics on one day if the topics are easier, or you can schedule harder topics on days that you have more time. And this is why you have to color code the days that you might be busy, which is what I did in the previous section in calendar. Personally, I assigned myself 2 topics for each day, and I gave myself 2 days per topic. So what I mean by this is that for day 1, I would be studying the thorax, which is the anatomy class, and cell biology, which is from my biochemistry/genetic class. And the next day, I would be studying general physiology, which is from my HUF physiology class, and carbohydrates, which is also again from my biochemistry/genetics class. So I was switching up topics in order to make sure that I wasn't studying the same topic continuously for multiple days in a row, and it would just switch things up and make it's slightly less boring for me when I was studying. For some topics, I also gave myself more time, so like 3 to 4 days, because I had more material or because I found that topic particularly difficult. Moving on to section 3, incomplete work. And this is by far the most important section of my study schedule. This is where I list all the work that I failed to complete for that day, and I would keep track of what work I didn't finish. And it's really important that you do this in order to remind yourself that maybe I have already passed the day of studying carbohydrates, but I actually didn't manage to completely study the entire topic. Maybe I only studied the first 3 lectures. Then you have to keep note of which lectures you haven't finished studying in order to make sure that you go back and study this during your buffer period. I'll talk more about this section in the next part, in execution. Section 4 is resources. So this is pretty self-explanatory. This is a list of the resources that I'm going to use. This might sound a bit basic, but it's important to have this because it serves as a reminder to not fall down the rabbit hole of discovering a whole bunch of great resources and seeing your notes, but not actually sitting down to use these resources and just study it. I definitely did this at the very beginning of the exam period when I was like going down the Google Drive of resources, and I was kind of getting lost on all like the senior notes that there were or like the past papers. And you have to make sure that you're studying and you're not looking for these resources as a way to procrastinate. I ultimately narrowed it down to just using lecture slides, past papers, and YouTube videos if I needed. I was also doing Anki at the time, so that was just all like a overarching study method. And there was also an anatomy survival guide, and I also wrote down formative assessments and tutorials because these were things that, number one, I had to do, it was part of my grade, and for tutorials I knew that they had a reputation of showing up again. Finally, the last section in planning is section 5 for exam breakdown, and this is the overview of everything that's going to be on the exam. I would recommend that you note down what topics will be examined and their respective weighting. This serves as a reminder of the big picture and reminded me that I needed to prioritize topics that were going to be more heavily weighted. For example, most MCQs for my physiology exam was going to be based on semester 2 topics, so I should be spending more time on that instead of focusing on semester 1. Part 2 of this entire study schedule is actually executing your plan. Basically, follow your plan and try to stick to it. So have a clear plan of what resources you will be using to study each topic and the overall workflow. So also figure out what time that you're going to be studying. Are you a morning bird or a night owl? Will you be studying mainly before lunch or after dinner? Have a clear idea of what you're going to be studying and how you're going to study. For me, day 1 of each topic was going to be doing relevant past paper questions. So remember how I said I had 2 days for almost every topic. So day 1 was going to be doing relevant past paper questions. Once I finished that, I would start to review that topic's lecture slides. So this would be the second half of day 1 and leading up to day 2. I personally aimed to do one topic before lunch and the second topic after lunch, but that didn't always work out. Just try to be flexible, but really try to stick to that schedule. All the while, I was also doing my Anki flashcards, and my bare minimum for studying during this exam season was that even if I didn't stick to my study schedule, I had to finish my Anki reviews. And this basically kept me sane because it made sure I was studying a bit of everything every day. While I worked during exam season, I added stuff to section 1 and section 3 of my framework. For section 1, I would color code the day if I failed to complete that day's work, and I preferred to use the color red. I would then change the color red to another color, so for me it was yellow, once I caught up for that day. For example, say I didn't finish studying the abdomen section for Sunday. However, I had extra time later in the week, and I saw that I didn't finish reviewing the abdomen anatomy because I had it marked red, and I would go back and finish that. So after I finished it, I would change the red color to a yellow color. So why did I do this? Partly, it keeps track of what I have accomplished and what I haven't accomplished. It was also really encouraging for me to see the boxes change from red to yellow, and it's a physical way for me to see progress. Alternatively, you can focus on when you did complete that day's work and mark or shade that box in a separate color every time you completed everything that you were supposed to do that day. Beyond just color coding and marking the boxes in section 1, I also added topics to section 3, which is incomplete topics. What I did is that I tracked the specific work that I did not complete. And initially this started as a running list, but later I separated this into 3 separate categories for the 3 exams I had coming up. I numbered the boxes on the left-hand side, so I knew exactly how many topics for each class I had to catch up on. The aim of this section is that even if you fail to reach your goal, you must keep track of what you did not do, or else you will forget. Be specific. For example, if I only reviewed half of this topic's lecture slides or MCQs, I would write this down under that section, under the corresponding exam. As you catch up and finish the work that you fell behind on, you can delete the box in section 3 and make the corresponding changes in section 1, changing it from red to yellow to indicate that you have caught up on that day's work. Finally, the third and last part of using my study schedule was adjusting it. It's very likely that you'll end up deviating from your study plan, but I think that the most important part that worked for me was that I stuck to trying to complete that day's work instead of catching up on what I missed beforehand. What I mean by that is, even if I missed one of the topics yesterday, I didn't finish doing that, I wouldn't try to catch up on that topic the next day. Instead, I would look at my calendar and say, okay, today I have scheduled to study carbohydrates. So I will study that, and if I have time, I will go back and catch up on what I missed. My priority each day was to complete what I had planned for that day first, and then catch up on what I didn't finish yesterday. Maybe you overestimated the amount of work you could get done in a day, or maybe you underestimated the amount of time it would take for you to fully understand a topic. Either way, just make note of the work that you didn't complete in section 3 and move on. In adjusting your study schedule, also try to be flexible. If you find that one resource doesn't really work for you, abandon it and don't look back. Talk to your peers and try different methods of studying. For example, try answering essay questions or writing questions instead of just reviewing senior notes or rereading your lecture notes. As you get close to the buffer period that you scheduled in section 1, start scheduling in the work that you fell behind on. Ideally, you would schedule break days and a buffer period if possible, but for me personally, having a buffer period gave me more reassurance because I knew that even if I really fell behind on my schedule, I had around 1 to 2 weeks to catch up on what I missed. The buffer period also allows for flexibility, and if you suddenly decide to change your study method, you will still have time to implement that new study method. For me, this was deciding to spend more time on SAQs and also deciding to make my own Anki cards for all of the lower limb lectures. I only started doing this around 2 weeks before my exam, and it was a good decision. I felt that making my own Anki cards for lower limbs really saved me for that section of the exam. Having this buffer period gave me the space to make changes to my study method even during the study period. So that sums up my basic study schedule planning plus execution plus adjustment. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, be sure to give this video a like and hit that subscribe button down below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!